Okay, welcome to Windows on the World. Good evening and welcome to Windows on the World. Yes, this is Windows on the World live from a secret location in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Actually, we're down an old drover's track and you can pass the sheep and some cows on the way here. Yes, Windows Towers is getting around and we've got our special guest just arrived, one of our speakers from the Windows on the World tour. Sandy has just walked into Windows Towers studios at a secret location somewhere on the borders of Somerset/Devon. Could be somewhere around that way. We can't give too much away, obviously. Oh, wait a minute. I haven't switched Google Maps off my phone. Oh, dear. Never mind. We could be infiltrated. Well, that's what it's all about tonight. It's all about exposing propaganda puppets. Now, we did a show, UK Subversives Exposed, a few weeks ago, actually. And we're going to follow it up with some other stuff tonight. It's actually, if you can hear some weird noise in the background, it's Sandy's opening a bottle of water. We're not actually celebrating or anything like that. But just take the top off it. Oh, no, don't take the top off it. Well, you know.
Exploding.
Well, yeah, it's exploding. No, it's an inside job. We're going to talk all about that tonight. We're going to talk all about inside jobs, that sort of thing, infiltration, and the way that these change agents are actually everywhere. Now, I'm going to give you a quote that I use in my talk. And it's from Demos, which is a think tank which gets a lot of its narrative basically from the intelligence services. They did tell us they were linked to MI5 when we debated them at Goldsmith College several years ago. This is a quote from Demos. This is from a few years ago. And they state, the new democracy will work with a combination of government open infiltration and citizen groups taking direct action. Let me just run that by you again. And have a little think about this. The new democracy will work with a combination of government open infiltration and citizen groups taking direct action. We're going to be talking about that tonight and what that actually means, because as we've exposed in the past, this goes through every level of bureaucracy and administration in the country. We're not just talking about the MI5 and the intelligence services here. They're all basically singing from the same hymn sheet. So Demos admitted being in close contact with MI5 when we debated with them a few years ago. And their papers that they produce parrot MI5 press releases. Latest, of course, being the rise of the far right. So they brought out papers called, for instance, things like the unreality of conspiracy theories, the echo chamber effect, talking to ourselves, it was called, as though that we are just talking to ourselves in the alternative media or on Facebook. And in a way, I suppose social media is very much like that because people form groups. But what they're trying to say is that the people who are speaking outside of the mainstream narrative are basically out of touch with everything. So it's kind of manipulation at every single level. And following our recent show, UK Agents of Subversion, which is available on Spreaker, and please subscribe to us on Spreaker if you haven't already. And you can subscribe to us on Spreaker at windowsontheworld.net/live shows. It's on the front page. Now, I'm carrying on this theme as there is an epidemic of narrative controlling paid for lobbyists, civil servants and basically media whores who are fighting each other to betray the public. You would think that after watching or listening to the media in the UK that we had a surplus of these narcissistic glove puppets trained in basic psychological subversion and divide and rule distraction. But every week I get more information on these as they keep popping up. Now, we've done endless shows on this, and they may be, I may say endless, but in actual fact, each one concentrates on different areas of this stuff. So it goes into public and private sector, it goes into dealing with your local authority, and that's what we like to do, bring it back down to earth where it really matters. So, the post-truth world, that's something we talk about. That's a document that came out of the British Psychological Association, basically trying to align people who are outside the mainstream controlled fake news narrative as being post-truth, and that these people are somehow not able to actually be told. So the KGB trained much better quality agents than this, but the British ones are everywhere, especially where there's a narrative of public opinion to control. I'm sure you've come across that one before. Now, what made me laugh this week was that the not-so-undercover agent provocateurs and Delphi technique facilitators, if you don't know what that is, go to a local council meeting, and wherever you hear the word facilitator, look at this stuff. It's in the public and the private sector. Facilitators, facilitating workshops and events and public meetings. It's a way of controlling the narrative. Look it up on YouTube or go to some of our shows from the past, especially the ones about Agenda 21. Oh, you know, that conspiracy theory that Clyde Lokes, the cabinet member for the environment, who's been actually imposing the local Agenda 21 plans for over 20 years, says it's a laughable conspiracy theory, but for some reason he doesn't want to debate in public about it. I wonder why that is. Well, it's because he had a 24% pay rise for imposing it. So he created the open concentration camp known as Waltham Forest, where he closed 70 roads off with no public consultation, but with the appearance of consultation. Oh yes, they send out forms. How much more cycling would you like to see? Well, I'd actually like to be able to get my car out of the end of my road. Oh, I'm afraid that's not on the agenda. We're going to put a tree planter there because it's got to be green. Now, what made me laugh this week, is that the not-so-undercover agent provocateurs and Delphi technique facilitators are still doing the rounds from Occupy, which was 7 years ago. Now, this week I was given info about who was at a fracking site. I sent out some YouTube videos with these goons from the old days of Occupy, and who would have thought that they are the same ones doing the same thing, except now they are fracking protesters. Now, when I was at a thing called the People's Voice, which closed down because it was basically infiltrated and ruined by, shall we say, media people who have their own agenda, well, I got introduced through a producer to people that I'd actually seen and knew were undercover operatives, and they were then working in the fracking arena. And one of them said he had been beaten up by the police and would like to come on the show. I thought, well, that's a strange thing, because last time I saw him, he was working with the police and he had an earpiece in, and he knew exactly when the protesters were going to be evicted from the Bank of Ideas, the fake squat set up from a place in Hackney which facilitates these groups. And let's say they are climate orientated. So let's say they are climate action. Let's say they are Climate Camp. Does anybody remember Climate Camp? Does anybody remember where the money from Occupy allegedly went? Into the Climate Camp Action bank account. Thanks a lot, Sarge. That'll pay for our Christmas do, won't it? Poor old Vivienne Westwood actually donated $1 million. Oh dear. That was a shame, wasn't it? Not very punk rock that, is it, Vivienne? Well, there you go. Ever get the feeling you've been cheated? Or should I say it as Oscar? Ever get the feeling you've been cheated, Vivienne? Ha ha ha. One of them even has a change of hairstyle, one of these new frackers. You know, years ago he was talking about Adam Smith and the invisible hand. Now it's all about fracking. And guess what? This man's over 16. He's had a change of hairstyle. He's now sporting dreadlocks. Sarge, you look like a soppy tot. Sorry, Jar, I'm in dread. We've made the point over many years that all groups that get any level of publicity are controlled opposition. But what do those wishing to take on their local Stasi or council without being a lone voice do? And this is what I've been building up to with that rather long but in a way, quite entertaining intro. Now, somebody got in touch with me this week who's been up against these developers and the local Agenda 21 plans. No, it's not conspiracy theory. We've now got the documents that go back to 1998 when it came into the council. We've got the documents which were signed off by those people who say that they represent you. You know them, they're called councillors. Yes, so we've got all the names and we've got the documents. It's a conspiracy theory, though. It's a conspiracy theory because... it's a green agenda. It's my wages. That's why it's a conspiracy theory. Well, never join any groups. We keep saying this over and over again, but it's very, very important. Never join any groups. Be wary of anything with action or reclaim in the title, right? Like reclaim the streets. Ooh, sweets. Ah, sweets. Well, this week, I got contacted by someone who'd been undermined by a stooge within the Unite Union. Yes, we have massive infiltration of the unions, and we've had union people on who have been absolutely trashed by people within their own union. Talk about divide and rule. Yes, the unions are a hotbed of subversion and narrative controlling. The Blairites and their ilk are everywhere. There has never been a shortage of ego-driven narcissists willing to carry out the bidding of their puppet masters, but since the private sector started training them as social entrepreneurs and future leaders, have you seen that? Go and have a look at that. Google social entrepreneurs and future leaders, see what organisations come up, and you will be amazed. It's the sort of thing we've been putting out for ages. And of course, it was a massive conspiracy theory when I was in Waltham Forest, but I only got the information from people all over the country who told me it was happening in their borough. So how come it's happening everywhere? Ooh, that must be a conspiracy then, mustn't it, if it's happening everywhere? But surely a conspiracy is an illegal act concerning two or more people. Well, let's see if we can find any of them that are actually engaged in criminal acts, because a lot of this stuff borders on criminal, and a lot of these change agents actually do engage in what is criminality. However, we know that the police won't do anything about it. So what do? Well, there's never been a shortage of these narcissists and social entrepreneurs and future leaders, and the sheer number of sociopaths in public office has never been so high. I don't know whether you've noticed this, but we started to find this out years ago, and you'd phone up the council and you'd come across this attitude where you were being psychologically subverted by the person on the other end of the phone. Now, there are remedies to that, and we come up with them all the time and have a lot of fun doing it. Now, we've brought a few of them down, a peg or two, even getting council Stasi websites removed after they violate the rights of those they purport to serve. We brought one down called Grimebusters the other week, and that was incredibly interesting because the main point about all this is that when you catch them out, things start to happen. I think what we should do is play the Grimebusters phone call, because this was about this fella who'd put somebody's picture up who'd allegedly not paid a fine, but they hadn't been fined because it hadn't been to a court. It was someone who had their picture put up by the local Stasi and said, we'd like to talk to this lady for environmental offences. We have a fine for her. Well, first of all, NSL can't fine anybody, and you can't work on hearsay. So you're alleged to have dropped a cigarette end. Well, if you're going to be fined, only a court can decide that. So they're now deciding who they want to actually demean in front of the public. So here's that phone call, because I think it's quite an interesting insight into how these change agents back down. This fella backed down after the phone call.
Hello?
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now, yes. Can I help you?
Yes, I hope so. I'm trying to find out who's responsible in Waltham Forest Council for a photograph that was put up of a woman, and it was on a site, Grimebusters. They've also tweeted it, and they're alleging that this woman is wanted for some kind of offence, and they say they want to give her a fine. And I wanted to know who was responsible for uploading the picture.
Okay, was it on a council poster then?
Yes, it's on Waltham Forest Council. It's on a Twitter feed, and it's also on Grimebusters. Now, I want to know who's responsible for doing this, because
It'll probably be our communications team. I can put you through if you want to give me your name.
yes, that's great. It's Mark here from Windows on the World.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all right, I just need you to find.
Here we go. Watch out, there's a useful idiot about.
Hello there. Hi. I'd like to know what was the person who uploaded a picture of a lady who was alleged to be wanted for a fine on a crime called Grimebusters, and it was also tweeted.
Certainly I can. That was me.
What, and who indemnifies you to upload pictures of people?
Well, people who give false information when caught up for littering offences have actually clearly, sort of committed an offence.
Okay, so are you legally qualified?
So as I say, we do have a team who go through this.
Okay, so
by the service.
Okay, so
and then we put it out there within the that is within. We are doing the rights to do that.
No, you're acting way beyond your authority. Fines can only be issued by a court, and this is an alleged offence. So what you've got is you've got a private company taking a photograph of somebody in the street and you're printing it. You're not allowed to do that.
I mean, I think you probably want to go through the complaints process, which you can find on our website.
No, if you uploaded the picture, I need to know what your name is.
My name is Nick Dovey, Nickdovey, but as I say, you will need to go through the complaints process.
I won't be doing that. I'll be putting this out in the public domain because I've recently had the whole of Crime Stoppers taken down for very similar things to this, and you have no authority to be putting people's pictures up like that. You have no authority to do that. Who indemnifies you to do it? Who underwrites you to do that?
I mean, as I say, we have the officers go out, they shoot the lady.
That's not the issue. No, the issue is that you uploaded it.
And then our officers, she gave false information to officers, as I say.
Yeah, we've got the avoidance here, the avoidance technique.
You uploaded the picture, so you're liable. What am I saying to you is this, that your officers, do they work for NSL or a private company?
As I say, I'm going to have to ask you to go to the proper...
No, I'm holding you accountable. Nick Dovey, I've got an extension for you because we'll be calling you.
As I say, you can reach us through the same...
You're a public official.
I'm going to have to end this call.
Oh, yeah, you're going to hang the phone up. Well, thanks for being on Windows on the World, Nick Dovey. Thank you very much.
Well, there you go, you see. Now, the thing is that he kept repeating the same mantra over and over again. However, what was very strange was, the next day, the Twitter feed and the website called Grimebusters, which is on Waltham Forest. You can go there, put Grimebusters in to search at Waltham Forest Council, and you'll find an empty page. It's all gone. So this is the power of what you can do. So in other words, these people who are in remote authority and they are imposing their will on you are not infallible. In fact, he probably went to the legal team after that and they said, well, has she been issued with a fine? And he said, no. And they probably said, take it down. Exactly. So he took it all down. And we've done this over the years quite a few times. The Crime Stoppers thing was a big deal. Most people who listen to the show will know about that, so I won't really talk about it. But you can find all this stuff, crime farming in Kent. Look that up. It's very interesting what happened there. In actual fact, once you hit the right people with the right information, it's amazing what happens behind the scenes. And of course you find out about it because it's all in public. Now, one of the many perks of doing a radio show is that I can call up these people and make them unwitting guests on the show, you see. So that's kind of an incentive for doing it. My incentive for actually getting these phone calls through is that I record them and put them out. And they record us, so we should record them. Well, it's over a year since we were banned from speaking about being banned from speaking. And this was at the Green Gathering, or shall we call it the fake Green Gathering? The gravy train, nose in trough, cognitive dissonant warriors for the police state and global interests made utter bloody fools of themselves. Check out Free Speech Banned at Green Gathering. Now, what happened there was quite amusing, because we could have spoken in a tent to about 30 people. However, thousands and thousands, probably near 10,000 people know about it now, and anyone who Googles the Green Gathering will find out what a bunch of enviro criminal fascists they are, because they get their money from, guess what? Agenda 21 programming, which is not a green policy in the words of their funders, the United Nations. Okay, you're going to say, oh, they're not funded by the United Nations. Indirectly they are, because it's an environmental program. So Sandy, would you like to come and join us? Because you're on the other side of the table at Windows Towers, at a secret location in a small village down a drover's track, past 3 farms and several cows. And it's a lovely little place, actually, because it's undulating. I love a bit of undulating land. And unfortunately,
the weather has not been too good last couple of days. It's not the best time of year to be in a camper van. However, it does beat January. That was quite bracing by the sea in January. I would recommend that anybody actually get a camper van and drive around, and then you'll see how many places are closed to camper vans. So yeah, we're gonna get on to our talks. Actually, we're going to be talking about the talks we're going to be doing 6th of October in Bristol. Book your tickets now. So yes, the gravy train, nose in trough, cognitive dissonant warriors, the police state are making fools of themselves. So do check out that free speech band at Green Gathering. Now, this was actually one of the comments underneath it. The irony is not lost on us. The British are known globally for their love of weather chat, and now a so-called Green Gathering is afraid of what? Talking about the weather? A big storm, perhaps. I think there will be something blowing their way one way or another, and it is. They're getting a lot of criticism over this. So the patronising response from these fake green virtue signallers can be found under the video on YouTube and on the website. Now, talking of subversives, what about that station with a high percentage of well-trained interrogators of the British public who parade themselves as virtuous and virtue-signalling voices of concerned reason? Yes, are you getting it? Are you getting warmer? LBC, which was London Broadcasting at one point, now it's called Leading Britain's Conversation. Well, it's a station with many change agents. Not everyone on it is a change agent, actually, but many of them are. We've got James O'Brien, and we've got this... his name will come to me in a minute. Nawaz. Majeed Nawaz. I nearly got my syllables mixed up there. Majeed Nawaz, the ex-jihadist who obviously got reprogrammed by British intelligence. The problem is, he's not very intelligent. However, what he's very good at is psychological trickery. Now, LBC is now leading Britain's conversation. It's owned by a company called Global Media, whose holding company in Jersey lends it money at high interest rates, so they pay no tax in the UK. I'm just going to tell you a bit about them, actually, because this is very interesting. Now, this makes no sense to me. A lot of people listen to this radio station. Now, the cash value of this company, Global Media, is 41.3 million. The net worth, however, is minus 778.7 million. How does that work? The total current assets are 105.6 million. And the total current liabilities are 143.8 million. So how can its net worth be minus 778.7 million? That's on Company Check, by the way. So I just thought I'd throw that in, because this lot are actually basically creating a debt through their parent company by paying off a loan at high interest to themselves, basically. So, yeah, Corporate Watch found that huge interest payments on loans it has taken from its owners through the Channel Islands Stock Exchange have wiped out its taxable profits in the UK. Now, it is as parasitical an organisation as its parasitic hosts, such as James O'Brien and the reformed so-called radical Majeed Nawaz, a manipulative subversive, well-trained in the art of subterfuge. He is a well-trained operative, and one caller put two and two together and stated he must have been trained by MI5, which would make complete sense. Because obviously he was interrogated by the intelligence services at one point because he's a ex-jihadist. And if you listen to this fella, you would think, well, wait a minute, if you're going to be a potential jihadist, you must believe in something. But this fella doesn't believe in anything. He believes in psychological subversion. He's actually the head of this Quilliam Foundation as well, which takes money, and it's a charity. Basically a narrative controlling charity. I'm just going to have a look at who's in chat. Eric Von Essex said, I agree. Well, that's brilliant. But can't we have some conflict, like leading Britain's conversation? The sort of shenanigans should be totally illegal. Well, thanks, Martin. It should be. But the point is that they're doing it just inside the law. And basically, His links to intelligence services could well come from him being a reformed jihadist who must have cooperated. He must have cooperated with MI5 or MI6 at some point, because he's now a controlled agent of state subversion. He uses MI5 type interrogation techniques. How do I know? Because groups that I was in years ago were infiltrated by people from MI5. Now, how do I know they were MI5? Because we did find that out. And it's not a secret with these people, because they do have direct links into the intelligence services, even when they're through think tanks like Demos. Demos links directly into MI5, as does the BBC. Because when you look at the MI5 narratives, why are these media corporations parroting what they've been told by, say, Mark Rowley, who resigned recently, who was talking about the rise of the far right? How come Demos do the same thing? How come these think tanks do the same thing? How come the British Psychological Association do it? Oh, conspiracy theory. They're in the same building as the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, and they're also in the same building as the Social and Economic Research Council. So all of these change agent groups and these think tanks feed each other, and they all actually work from this narrative coming down from the intelligence services. So they work basically, these two particularly, this James O'Brien and this Nawaz, they're bullying callers with questions. Now what they do is they don't let the caller make the point. They start bullying them with questions. In other words, they ask them personal things about themselves or their beliefs in an attempt, and it's usually quite successful actually, to turn things round and start attacking the caller, which is not their role at all. They're there to, lead Britain's conversation. Well, let people speak, but they don't do that. So they bully callers with questions, and they manipulate, and basically they steer counter-arguments. They create counter-arguments by exposing them for something that they've not done. And that's nothing to do with the point that has been raised. So here is basically Maajid Nawaz, the slippery-tongued lizard of LBC, in action. This is somebody who people may recognise. They may recognise his voice, and the only way he could get through to LBC was by calling himself George, because they've blocked all his other numbers and names, so he called them under another name. This is very, very enlightening, and this is psychological subversion in action. This was from LBC yesterday.
Zionism is the 1967 UN version, based on international law. In Israel, he supports the existence of a Jewish state, but he also supports the US perspective on that, which outlaws the theft of land and the forbidding of the ownership of land by the people who live in it or Palestinian. I mean, that seems to be pretty racist there, Maajid. If you're calling someone who objects to that a racist, I think that kind of makes you a racist. You know what I mean? To me, that is racist behaviour, to stop people owning land in their own country.
Hold on, George. Hold on a minute. Hold your horses. Hold on. Corbyn referred to a group of people in othering language. The group of people he was referring to, in the context of the sentence he uttered, it would have made no sense if he was referring to Theresa May or any other white English person as saying they speak English and they don't understand English irony. That doesn't make any sense. He was referring to British Jews in that speech. And as you just heard from the person he was directly referring to, who claims that Corbyn knew exactly who he was. So if you're referring to a minority group and you're othering them by inferring they don't necessarily understand how to be English properly, George, you're meant to be, I imagine, a leftist. Leftists generally are uber sensitive about every microaggression of racism they see coming from the right. Are you seriously telling me that you can't see those othering comments of Corbyn in any way as othering a minority group in this country?
Well, I'm saying that something that's very small and subtle has been magnified enormously.
Wait. We'll get to whether it's magnified, George.
Corbyn is unacceptable.
George, we'll get to whether it's magnified. First, do you agree that it was othering of a minority community?
Well, I'm not sure of the context. This is a really subtle thing here. He was addressing a particular small group who misunderstood a particular point. I mean, to me, it's making massive mountains out of molehills.
George, are you? What is your background, George? Are you? Tell us a bit about yourself. Do you vote Corbyn? Are you a leftist? Who are you?
I kind of struggle to vote for anyone now. I personally know I've seen Corbyn in action as an individual, and I have fantastic respect for him because I used to run a little charity in Croydon.
Are you? What are you typically? What we describe as white English? Who are you?
Sorry?
Are you white English?
Oh, a bit of racial profiling going on here now.
No. You're born in England, right?
I mean, the point is, Corbyn.
No, that's not the point, George. I'm asking you a question. I'll ask you what the point is.
Your MI5 techniques here. I mean,
there we are. Wow.
When you've got problems with an argument, you start forcing questions on people and force them into corners.
Do you think I'm MI5, George?
That are inappropriate to the argument.
Do you think I'm MI5?
That's the whole training. Is this? I mean,
do you think I've been trained by the MI5?
Brian does it. It's a technique that LBC presenters use. When they've got a problem, they ask a question, demand an answer to that question because it goes nowhere that the caller wants to go. That's what it's about.
Do you think I'm trained by MI5?
I think there's agencies that train presenters. It's obvious, okay, and there's been books written about this, okay. Books written
Which
about
ones?
I've read.
Which ones?
Well, about the CIA and the media, global media. It doesn't matter about stuff like that. I mean,
if it doesn't matter, I'd ask you why you raised it. You've just suggested I'm trained by MI5, and now you're saying it doesn't matter.
About your technique.
My technique trained by MI5?
When you get in a problem with an argument, trying to force people to answer an inappropriate question.
Yeah. Okay, so now considering you've called up on a national radio show where I'm the host and you're the guest, are you going to do me the courtesy of actually addressing the question?
Actually, you're the presenter.
In this conversation, but I've responded to your question by saying.
Well, George, no. Talking about power dynamics, George. Considering you are a lefty that has great respect for Corbyn,
I'm not a lefty anymore. I'm not neither left
really?
nor right.
Okay. Considering you're somebody that has great respect for Corbyn, the lefty, and really, really do respect him so much that you've called on a national radio show to defend him, George. I'm going to put it to you when you talk about power. I'm going to put it to you how entirely inappropriate it is for white English George to call up and say that brown Pakistani origin Majid is the racist for being concerned about othering of minority communities in this country. Do you not see that in any way that you're arrogantly dismissing concerns of racism coming from minority communities who you're meant to be looking after, George, as somebody, what was Corbyn's slogan, was it? A kinder, fairer politics? I mean, does that sound kind and fair to you? Dismissing minority communities' concerns who are screaming at the top of their lungs that they're worried about a rising anti-Semitism across Europe?
Are you concerned about the Palestinians being treated the way they are in Israel?
George, you don't get to answer my question with a question, George. You get to answer my question, and then if you like, you can ask me one. Right? So first answer me.
Should have called him a Nazi.
He's concerned about 3 hours a day of Jewish propaganda complained about Corbyn.
Jewish propaganda?
It's an operation.
Jewish propaganda, George.
That's actually what the whole of the conversation is about. It is about Jewish propaganda.
The Jewish community in this country.
George, did you just use the word Jewish propaganda?
0.5% of the population want to dictate to the 99.5% here. I do not.
Who's that 0.5%, George?
Sorry?
Who is that 0.5% you refer to?
The Jewish community.
Right, there you are. George, you're a disgusting anti-Semite who believes in Jewish controlling the media, conspiracy theories. You believe Jews are dictating to the rest of the country how to behave. You, calling in to defend Corbyn, have just proven my point. You're an anti-Semite, George, and I suggest to you go and check your privilege and go and purge yourself of that disgusting trait you have known as racism. Because it has seeped so deep inside you that while calling to defend Corbyn against racism, you're oblivious to the fact that you're preaching it yourself. Really, that's really low of you, George, to say the Jews control the media and that being 0.5% of this country, they control the rest of the country. Does it not occur to you that's exactly the kind of propaganda Hitler pushed before he engaged in the Holocaust? It's disgusting, George. You make me sick. Frankly, I don't ever want to speak to you again. Can everyone please make sure I speak to you again? That's disgusting.
Well, that was pretty disgusting, wasn't it, everybody out there? I mean, I was pretty disgusted listening to that lizard-tongued, programmed drone, because basically, when you phone up a radio station, you're the caller and you're putting your point across. What he did there was use interrogation techniques, which are exactly the same as the people that he's meant to be against. He's meant to be against Nazis, isn't he? Well, that's like basically the kind of cartoon version of what a Nazi is. It's someone who keeps berating you and asking you questions over and over again when you're trying to make a point. I mean, this is
like Stasi, the whole. Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
Well, if that didn't make you sick out there, then you need to wake up a bit more, I think. But that's why I can't listen to these radio stations. That they make me feel repulsed by these creeps who are just subverting. They haven't got an honest atom in their body. Now, that he's a parasite, that guy. He's an absolute parasite. What is he doing? He was meant to be some form of jihadist who had a revelation on the way to Damascus or on the way back from Damascus or wherever it was. Now, wait a minute. If that happens, you don't become an arsehole, right? And he has. That's what he is. And he runs this foundation that scrapes money off everybody they can get it from, called Quilliam. And look it up, because they were getting massive funding. I don't know where they are anymore, but it's a charity. Now, if that doesn't make you sick, that phone call, then I don't know why you're listening to Windows on the World, really, but maybe it's because we let people have their say on here. But the thing is that if you're a phone-in host, that is the opposite of what you should be doing. You're meant to facilitate the caller and get their point of view. And what he did there was absolute subversion. I don't suppose you've heard that call, have you, Sandy? It's the first time you've heard it. What did you think of it?
Well, I thought it was outrageous, really, because I mean, as a show host, you're supposed to take a balanced view and almost, you're the middleman. You just have to listen to somebody else's point of view. And yes, you can question them on it. But literally, that was an interrogation. It was almost like bullying tactics, and it was really outrageous. And the guy has obviously got his own political agenda that he's pushing through there, and I find that abhorrent. The whole thing. I'm amazed that LBC allowing that to happen.
Well, LBC is not what it was. I mean, I remember it years ago when you had Ken Livingstone, Richard Littlejohn, who has always been a complete
pain in the arse.
Well, he's a plank, really, isn't he? And his excuse is, well, excuse me, I'm from Essex. Well, that doesn't excuse you from being what he is, I mean, he actually was next to him in a bar, and he used that line on the barman as well, in his private members club. Excuse me, I'm from Essex. Well, no, that doesn't excuse you. I'm sorry, Mr. Littlejohn. That doesn't excuse you for being totally ignorant of everything apart from what lines your pocket, But they used to have like these round table things, and people would put their points of view across. And if you think of how things have changed, it's incredible, because that phone call was so revealing. That Maajid Nawaz has been trained in these subversion techniques. He's been trained to turn accusations onto people and to use psychological subversion. So who trained him? Well, he spent a long time with the intelligence services being deprogrammed out of his jihadism, didn't he? Apparently. Yeah. So, I mean, what's the difference between him and any other MI5 asset? The thing is that, okay, maybe he's just known to MI5. But I mean, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because of the things I've found out this week about subversion going on, basically when people are just trying to organise things in their local area. It's actually interesting the way that things have gone down to Twitter, and the fact that the BBC report what people are saying on Twitter as though it's actually news, So I find some of Trump's tweets quite amusing. Here's one. Social media is totally discriminating against Republican and Conservative voices. Speaking loudly and clearly for the Trump administration, we won't let that happen. They are closing down the opinions of many people on the right, and he's put that in capital letters, while at the same time doing nothing to others. Another one was, censorship is a very dangerous thing and absolutely impossible to police. If you are weeding out fake news, there is nothing so fake as CNN and MSB and NBC. And yet, I do not ask that their sick behaviour be removed. I get used to it and watch with a grain of salt or don't watch at all. Now, that's actually pretty mature, isn't it? But I've never known a time when anybody's come out to the media and said you're fake news. I think that is a defining moment. What do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, really, because there's this whole thing about fake news, but it's going on in the mainstream media. If you really want to get the truth, you have to go to the alternative media. And I'm it's pushing people further into alternative media. There's so many people I know that won't actually listen to the mainstream media anymore, and that's a good thing, because maybe they can. I mean, I know there's a lot of rubbish on the internet, but at least you can come to somewhere like Windows on the World and see a balanced view.
Well, hopefully, yes, we are
yeah.
balanced. That's the thing. I mean, I hope to be balanced at all time. But when I hear that kind of cynical, vile subversion, which that reptilian creep has just imposed on somebody, and the way that they use this subversion, it makes me sick, because I would never do that to anybody, because I have morals. He obviously has no morals. He's a creep.
Yeah.
Absolute creep doing that.
And he's definitely been programmed. It's interesting. Years ago, I used to work in corporate live events, and I had to do an event for Google out in Dublin, and I couldn't work out what this event was, because it was called the Summit Against Violent Extremism, and what they'd got all these ex-terrorists and reprogram them, and basically it was I didn't realise until now that I know what I know, that actually, because it was run by a guy called Jared Cohen, who we all know now is quite up on all this stuff, and he used to work for Condoleezza Rice in the presidential kind of stuff in DC. So, but he ended up working for Google in their think tank, which is, again, it's the whole kind of think tank thing. It's like the Club of Rome. And so all of that was about reprogramming jihadis, IRA people, whatever, and using them in the media. And that's what I think this is all about. I think, I'm talking sort of mid-2000s this was going on. And I didn't realise it was to combat populism. It's to combat what we're doing. It's to combat this, the alternative view of what is really going on. And they've programmed these people to get into positions of power.
Well, I can't imagine LBC ever having Osama bin Laden live from a cave in Afghanistan, but it's quite interesting, because this is exactly how the security services work. I don't know why that came into my head, actually, because I was thinking, would Osama bin Laden have been able to be as subversive as that idiot on there? I don't think he would, actually.
Well, who knows?
It's just because it was interesting, because all that the 9/11 thing happened. It was some person from Syria, and I can't remember. I think he was a government official. They got him on, and he said Osama bin Laden couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
They said he's a bit of a joke, really. He's not a very good builder either. I mean, of course, Mr. Nawaz would go, that I find that absolutely offensive, that you would say that Osama bin Laden is in any way humorous, the man who killed 3,000 people on 9/11, and you're making a joke about this? You make me sick, Windows. I don't want you ever to be on my show ever again.
Oh, it's such a shame you weren't, Mark. Really.
I know, but I think
you would have hung him out to dry.
But no, the thing is, though, that Kevin's very good at that, but he's actually better when he writes. Actually, Kevin's brilliant at writing stuff and really pointing this stuff out, and sometimes because he's such a nice bloke, I think he was actually taken aback by what he was hearing there, because
absolutely.
It's such an affront.
He sounded shocked.
Yeah, it's a shock to you, because you're meant to be having a conversation, a bit of banter. Okay, they can stick the knife in and accuse you of something, but then you should be allowed to answer back.
To speak.
And what he did was absolutely, it's absolute subversion, and that is an extreme version, actually, because he's an extremist. There's no doubt about it. What he did there was extreme.
I mean, he's a hater.
Yeah, he's a hater. Yeah, he's using the politics of hate to shut down debate.
Yeah,
that's what you're doing.
absolutely.
The politics of hate being used there to shut down debate. Get hope, not hate, on him. Yeah. They all work for the same people, though. That's the thing, you see. Do you work for MI5? No, I work for MI5, but that went bust years ago, you know. Yeah. But let's get back to, another Trump tweet. At this point, it is a virtual certainty that Trump is... Oh, hang on. Wait a minute.
When we went off.
Windows on the World is back on air again. Actually, I think we went off live for a few minutes there, but we seem to be back again. We seem to have a problem with this microphone crashing, but at least we got back in pretty quickly. I was ready with Ian Terry there playing Smiley Jacks. We might play that a bit later on. But we were just talking about these tweets that Trump has put out, which seem quite fair and balanced compared to what we've just heard from our own media. Of course, the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Centre are arm in America, busily attacking anyone who has a clue how things work. And this is a very, very important point, because when we look at things like the Southern Poverty Law Centre, they start interfering in British politics when they can, and they seem to be another arm of the intelligence services. I mean, where does this stuff stop? I mean, there's a book by Fletcher Prouty, and it's all about this psychological subversion. Just look that up. I mean, it was referred to in one of our interviews. I think David Shayler was on it, actually, and we were talking about this stuff 5 or 6 years ago. But it's an absolute epidemic now, and we were getting it at the People's Voice, and I had it before that when we were sort of uncovering these people who'd been put into the so-called truth movement to actually, you know, to subvert it. And you can see that there's a great article actually which has got great bits. Martin's saying the stream was not broken. Music now, great. That is great to have Martin here. I should make Martin admin actually, because he's on a secret island which is under its own jurisdiction. I don't know whether you knew that.
No,
but, no, we can't reveal where he is, obviously.
Obviously,
you know.
no.
That's
pretty cool. On your own jurisdiction, that's great.
Well, yes, it's not under the Crown anyway. It has its own government, which is great, you know. And I think it was, you know, according to the Romans, you know, the Druids were meant to have a base there. The other base that they had was on Morn, which is Anglesey, you see, and there's another one on another island somewhere else. What am I doing now? I think we need to get back to subversion here.
Yeah.
And I was going to talk about Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. Now, the Iranian government put her in prison, and Boris Johnson was saying that she was over in Iran training journalists. Well, let's throw a bit of light on what she was actually doing, because she was working for an organisation called the BBC. Now, they're not spies and subversives, are they? But they have an organisation called Media Action, right? Now,
Sounds subversive to me.
it's very subversive. In actual fact, when you even look at what they say they do, you know that they are interfering in sovereign foreign governments. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
They actually really say it. Basically, by stating that she was involved in training journalists, he has given ammunition to those elements of the establishment who view her as just another example of what the Supreme Leader described as an infiltration project by the West. This is from this news story off the BBC website. Well, she is an infiltration project. That's exactly what she is. The Iranians are absolutely right. So she's pictured there with her kid and her husband as though she's been kept in prison for 5 years. She's meant to be having 5 years in prison, but they've let her out for some reason. Now, the BBC charitable front, backed by the licence fee paid for by the British public, is actually funding the overthrow, in my opinion, and also by the evidence that I see, of government in different countries. In other words, they're creating a shadow government. That's what they're doing. Now, she did work for BBC Media Action, an infiltration project. It states on their website. Here we go. Let's see what it says on their website. Our work reaches over 200 million people across the world. In Africa, we work in Ethiopia, Kenya, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania and Zambia. In Asia, we work in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Cambodia, India, Nepal and Pakistan. In Europe and the Caucasus, we work with journalists and TV stations from Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, Turkey and Ukraine. In the Middle East and North Africa, we have projects or work with journalists in Algeria, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestinian territories, Syria and Tunisia. So, it says we support media and communication efforts that strengthen governance. Oh, do they? Well, wait a minute. Isn't it up to the government of the country to strengthen their own governance? How would they strengthen governance by being a media operation? How would that happen? How do you think that happens, Sandy? Have you got any idea? Because you're good at media, aren't you? You're not about media.
Well, I mean, obviously they're you know, it says that we make entertaining, informative and educational TV, radio and digital programmes that attract large audiences. We encourage people to discuss what they see and hear, so they're spying basically, and they're change agents. They come in and they alter the narrative. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to alter the narrative to whatever they want it to be.
Yeah, so okay, so say you're a country and you get a journalist going into your country and they want to report on what goes on in your country and they're fair and unbalanced. Fair enough. But we're not talking about journalism here. It says we make entertaining, informative and educational TV, radio and digital programmes that attract large audiences. But making programmes is only part of the story. Wait a minute, why is that only part of the story then? Oh, our projects encourage people to discuss what they see and hear because we know discussion helps people to take the steps to make changes that can improve their lives. That is absolute subversion.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
We strengthen the capacity of journalists and others working in media and communication through training and long-term mentoring. Oh, I wonder if they produce journalists like Mr. Nawaz, for instance, who are absolutely bought out and paid for subversives. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe she's in prison because she's training subversives to overthrow the government, and these people in Iran know that that's what she's doing. They're creating a shadow government. Because let's put it this way, if the average Iranian politician or even the Ayatollah turned on BBC News and heard what they were saying about his country, he would be of the opinion that they were lying, I would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they send in people who are subverting their country and they're surprised that they get chucked in jail. Unbelievable. So we run formal training workshops. Oh,
Yeah.
do they?
They're doing this across the board, aren't they? From global to local. This is the global part of it. It's just, it's no different to the social entrepreneurship that you're getting in your local government, in the local community, spaces and stuff. It's just, it's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same programming that's going on everywhere, from global to local. Whether it's media, whether it's in communities, it's there. Whether it's in police forces, whatever. It's the same programming.
Absolutely. That's why I'm doing this show tonight, Sandy, because I see how it all links up. These people are all singing from the same subversion hymn sheet. And it's psychology. I've been reading a lot and studying this stuff about psychological subversion because it's really interesting. Because when you're up against it and you feel powerless, we've all done this. We've gone to some meeting or met some tyrannical person, and we've gone out of that meeting and we've gone walking down the street rather shocked because something happened. They got the better of us, and we don't quite know at what point they did it. And that's what, to me, is the importance of learning about this stuff, because you can then identify what they're doing and call it out for what it is. And it's not like this is an isolated thing. We're talking about, so the BBC are openly saying that they're subverting all these countries.
Yeah. Quite happily. They've got it published on this document. I can't believe it that they're actually saying this is what we're doing and this is how we do it. It's unbelievable. And it's almost as though they're taking it as though unless they're stupid and they know this is the way they've been programmed, this is okay.
Well, yes, but what it's about is the loss of the moral compass.
Yeah, exactly.
So what happened to that creep who works for LBC? What happened to him? He wasn't obviously tortured to within an inch of his life, because he's still here and he wants to work for subverting the British government in a different way now. Okay, so he's working for MI5. Now, in my opinion, the intelligence services should be sacked, and it should all go back to central government, because this stuff is going from them into these think tanks. And I've studied this a long time, and I've had these creeps come up to me, and they have one thing in common: they're not very bright, but they don't have any moral compass. These are just basically zombies, in my opinion, and they're trained to work in a certain way, and they do it, and they don't think about what they're doing. They think about the results of what they're doing and how it benefits them. That's all they do. So anyway, let's have a look. Eric von Essex: BBC local radio would have to improve to be rated as awful. It's full of subversives. HS2, I think it's more to do with the military. Yeah, maybe you're right. I think they should rename the Jeremy Vile. Do you know Jeremy Vile? Yeah, the Jeremy Vile radio show, the MI5 propaganda program. It's blatantly obvious when you hear it.
Yeah.
I actually knew a relative of Jeremy Vile, and he wasn't vile at all. He was quite good. We did some gigs together. I think it was his brother-in-law, but I don't want to give too much away because we are at a secret location in a certain county, which could be Somerset or Devon. Or it could be Dorset, we have to keep it fairly vague. But I think we should have a bit of a break now, actually, because it's reaching the top of the hour. Or we're at the top of the hour. The top of the hour, and it's Ian Terry with Smiley Jack. Started it earlier on. Let's finish it.
go, go. We gotta go, go. We gotta go, go. We gotta go, go. Smarty Jacks, way down at Smarty Jack, way down at Smarty Jacks, have a good time. Sam rode into town, slow and coolly. He had come to kill Big Bill Dooley. Dooley eyed him cautiously, said, "Say man, don't pick no fight with me." Come down at Smarty Jacks, way down at Smarty Jacks, way down at Smarty Jacks, have a good time. And we gotta go, go. We gotta go, go. We gotta go, go. We gotta go, go. Smarty Jacks, way down at Smarty Jacks, way down at Smarty Jack, have a good time.
Yeah, that's Ian Terry there and Smiley Jacks. Fantastic stuff. And let's get back to subversion. You know, let's go back to BBC Media Action, who were sending out spies to other countries, and one of them got caught and put in prison. What a surprise, you know. I mean, would you go to Iran and start spying for a foreign government openly? I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that anyway, because I wouldn't go to a country that's let me in and spy on them.
Exactly.
You see what I mean?
It's bad manners, isn't
It's
it?
bloody bad manners. You know, I mean, you know, that's the thing. I was over a funny story actually. I was in Nepal and with my friends are Nepalese, you know, and we were going into the national park, and we got stopped by the military police. And I don't speak Nepali, but they were saying, "Where are you taking this white man?" and my girlfriend in the front seat said, "Well, I've got his passport." He said, "What do you mean you've got his passport?" He said, "Well, he's my boyfriend." And the others were, it looked dodgy actually, because I was with three Nepalese who knew exactly where they were going, you know, and but
I thought you were subversive, you see. Yeah.
Well, actually, the thing is that when this is the point I was wanting to get to, is when you go to these countries and it's meant to be a police state, it's much more easygoing than here.
Yeah.
Because if you get stopped by the British police, they'll have everything out of the bloody car.
Yeah.
They'll be looking at your tyres, you know, demanding that you produce your documents within 2 weeks. But if you go to somewhere that's meant to be actually under military governance, you don't really get that, I suppose, because they've got too much else to do or can't be bothered. Whereas, you know, I think when they talk about a police state, I think you have to redefine it, you know. Well, I suppose that you could say that the biggest police states are in this country. That's what my experience has been over the past few years with the way that things are being run or not run. But let's get back to this this subversive operation, this BBC operation. So they are actively involved in subverting the governments of countries. They are acting as a shadow government. That's what we were saying before the break. They carry on their website. This is BBC Media Action. We share our audience research methods and insights with our media partners to help them operate more effectively. Hang on a minute. We share our audience research methods and insights with our media. Who are your media partners? Who are the BBC's media partners? Because I thought they were independent, you see.
Yeah.
To help them operate more effectively. So, who are their media partners in these other countries that they go to?
So they're collaborating with other agencies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spying for corporate interests and data gathering. Many of our projects they carry on are designed to improve editorial quality and raise the production standards of programme makers. So, okay, so you go to different countries and you go in and say, well, we're going to raise the standard of your production. How would that go down? Do they actually go and say that? Oh, your TV's crap. We're going to come in and take over. That's basically what they're saying. So in other words, we can offer you the best. And I suppose, in a way, yeah, if you go into some of these countries, they probably, because they don't know that, maybe they don't know that much about the UK, for instance, yeah, and they go, oh, Britain, they're world leaders in media, you know. They might think that, you see. That's the thing, isn't
it? Well, BBC is supposed to be the best in the world to any other foreigners, isn't it? It's supposed to be the best TV you can get.
Well, yeah, apparently not very popular in Iran now, though.
No, thank goodness.
Exactly. Many of our projects...
At least they've got some sense.
Yeah. Many of our projects are designed to improve editorial quality, raise the production standards, influencing policy and controlling the narrative, attempting to subvert and brainwash populations where they infiltrate. This is about infiltration, isn't it?
It is.
From community radio stations to national broadcasters. Oh, so they go into the community level. And what we're going to do, we're going to go to the village and empower you.
Yeah.
We're going to empower the women. We're going to get the kids involved. You know.
Social entrepreneurship.
That's right. Training future leaders. When we make our own programmes, we often partner with local broadcasters and develop their staff as wait a minute, you go into another country and you go, we're the BBC. Now, yes, I think, we could work with your radio station, but we're going to have to change it because we're change agents. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of them because I think they're a bit indigenous. We're going to bring in them because they're from outside the area and they'll work with our subversive kind of agenda to divide and rule the population for an interested third party, perchance, When we make our programmes, we often partner with local broadcasters. Really? That's so good of you. Only benevolent. And they develop their staff. That's great, isn't it? So, we're coming into your radio station and we're going to take over. That's basically what they're saying, isn't it? We're going
to. It's insidious, isn't it? It's
vile,
so vile,
disgusting. Yeah. Insidious. I actually put that down in my notes, Sandy.
Insidious takeover
of indigenous media.
Absolutely.
That's, absolutely. Yeah. We illustrate to policymakers and influencers. We illustrate to policymakers. Now, who could that possibly be? Policymakers. Well, this is the change agent thing that local government do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stakeholders, policymakers.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Agenda 21 is all about creating and supporting policymakers. That's the whole. That's what it's all about, particularly in local governments. It's all about policy making. It's like a Politburo, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's kind of the reason I'm putting all this stuff together, and the reason we put this stuff together is because it's all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a local council or whether they're subverting Iranian government. It's the same principle,
It's the same programme. And it is a programme. It's some sort of MK Ultra programme that they're using that literally is from global to local from UK all around the world. It's mad.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is, Sandy, UFOs have just landed on the White House lawn. We're going to have to actually move on to the next caller now. But thanks for your input there. And I don't know what they're putting in the water. But, okay, George in Croydon. Oh, George, not the notorious anti-Semite who was talking about the the lack of sense of humour of certain Zionists. I mean, even Cam Wiseman or what basically Herzl. They wouldn't have been offended by that, would they? Do you know what I mean? Like the major Zionist movers and shakers would not have been kind of perturbed by saying, "God, you've got no sense of humour." Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I don't think if he'd have gone to the 1896 Zionist conference, I'm sure they would have still had a sense of humour about it. You know.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so.
Well,
yeah.
I think they probably would have. You know,
yeah.
it's the thing is, it's these puppets who are following in the grabbing onto the coattails of their controllers. You know, like that creep on LBC, whose name we don't need to mention
there is
anymore.
a decided lack of sense of humour in all of this, actually. Yeah, you're right.
Oh yeah, we use media to affect government policy and actively change the perceptions of the host populations. Is exactly what they do.
Oh,
And it goes,
agents.
yeah,
My
and
gosh.
this is from their website, BBC Media Action, and we produce policy and research publications and participate in conferences and events to explore, in inverted commas, what works in the field of media and communication for development. Now that is like something out of the KGB, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what the KGB would be saying. We produce policy and research publications and participate in conferences and events to explore what works in the field of media.
Yeah.
It's like the whole thing is a subversion action plan, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely.
Open infiltration.
Yeah.
We work with institutions to develop policies, legislation. Oh, so they are subverting what's going on in countries. Wait a minute. So
because they're changing the legislation.
yeah, we work with institutions. Which institutions do you work for? Would it be ones that are actually working with the government of the country, or the ones who are trying to take it over?
Exactly. Yeah.
And regulation that can support media organisations to work in the public interest. Well, whose public interest in that? You know, shadow government, research and insight. Here we go, BBC Media Action, research and insight. How people use, access and communicate information around the world has profound implications. Well, it does if you work for this lot, doesn't it? Because you might end up running the country.
Yeah.
For development, diplomatic and foreign policy. Well, we all know what the Al Jazeera documentary had to say about that, with diplomats in the UK being offered £1 million to take down Corbyn. I wonder if it's run out yet. I think they might need some more. So they actively infiltrate sovereign nations with their subversion, influencing foreign policy. How long before they are interfering in elections and raising political interest? Yeah, they are. Well, I've actually said it. I mean, I wrote these down as notes, you see, and I preempted my notes by what we've been talking
absolutely.
about.
Yeah.
So there's no evidence they're not already doing it.
Yeah.
So this area of the BBC Media Action website, it states on their website, is designed to inform policy. Oh, wait a minute, I thought you were training journalists. So now you're informing policy. That's a bit of a leap, isn't it? Inform policy, research and practice on the role of media. Oh, so they're going to tell you what the role of your media is in your own country. That's good of them, isn't it?
Yeah. Gosh. It's just unbelievable, yeah.
As it relates to the main priorities of BBC Media Action, which is obviously subverting.
You see, they're using resilience.
Resilience, yeah.
Resilience, that wonderful word resilience. It's in every sustainable development document you can think of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's totally been written by a lizard brain, this has.
Absolutely.
Designed for development policymakers and researchers. Well, wait a minute. I thought they were training journalists.
Journalists, not policymakers.
Yeah.
And yeah, what's this all about? I mean,
well, Boris Johnson said they were training journalists. I believe Boris because he's really got his finger on the pulse, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And if someone would know, it'd be him, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you'd think. Not.
I still like that story because his dad looks like him, you know. And my friend lives around the corner, and Boris Johnson's dad put on his cycling helmet, got on his bike, and someone across the road said, "Wanker!" And he said, "No, that's my son."
That's my son.
It must happen all the time, you know.
Oh, it must do. Oh, poor man.
Yeah. We may not be specialists in media and
That's my
communication.
son.
Let's get back to
Sorry,
this.
I can't stop laughing.
Well, no, please. I hope my audience can't either. I hope my agent's listening.
Poor old Boris's dad. Anyway.
I know. He was on that terrible programme, though, wasn't it? When he went down to someone's house the other day, and Boris Johnson's dad had been taken to India to meet these Indian people, who were obviously totally bemused and bored by the whole thing, as were the people who went there. And I think they were trying to get this kind of cultural exchange going.
That thing,
but it was just they were meant to be comedians, and I've never, but like you put a comedian in front of a camera. And they'll think, I'm on, I've got to think of something. No, nothing. Nothing whatsoever, designed for development policymakers and researchers who may not be specialists in media. Oh, so we're gonna tell you how you can specialise in media and communications. Research and Insight is a space where BBC Media Action can share its policy analysis, insight and research findings, and where these issues can be debated and interrogated.
Interrogated? Oh my goodness. Wow.
So their research findings. Well,
I'm amazed they're quite happy saying that,
Yeah, but I mean, if they're saying that on their website, that's a benign version of what they're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, in other words, the Iranians know a spy when they see one.
Yeah.
So this woman is a bloody subversive.
Yeah.
That's why they put her in prison. It's not because it's an outrageously
terrible
regime.
Exactly,
What about the May regime? The May regime puts loads of people in prison.
Yeah.
So they share their subversive techniques with trained useful idiots. Yes, okay, I think we've been through all that. Extreme left terrorism. Now this is an interesting one, getting off the BBC Media Action. A bomb exploded in Villorba, Italy, in a province of Treviso, outside of the far-right Lega Nord party. No one was hurt. Another bomb was defused by specialists. A left-wing anarchist group claimed credit for the bombs on the internet. Matteo Salvini, leader of the Lega party, said on Twitter, "They are trying to stop us, but thugs and delinquents don't frighten us." I think he's referring there to elements with his own government.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Gladio, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
That's just a story that you might want to look up, because the extreme left that's been created out of the intelligence services is terrorism. I say that not lightly. I say that as fact, because under the Terrorism Act, I think of 2000, they are the definition of terrorism. I'm not saying they're all blowing people up. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they are putting forward a political ideology which is unlawful, in the respect that they are calling for disorder. And that's exactly what Hope Not Hate do through their third-party agents, Antifa. Prove me wrong on that. Because Hope Not Hate actually put out on their social media that there's a fascist group meeting. It was look up OAPs versus Antifa, OAPs and Antifa on Windows on the World, and you'll see how ridiculous the whole thing is. But what they do is they latch on to Antifa. So Hope Not Hate are connected to the Antifa terror group. They are connected. Yeah. And this is the thing. We're going to get to that a bit later. However, the divide and rule strategy blurs when the state creates it all. Yes, chapter 2 we're on, I think, now. But this is interesting, actually. The majority of Democrats, 51%, say it's more important to impose sanctions and take other hostile actions against Russia than to engage in diplomacy, while 74% of Republicans take the opposite view of diplomacy over confrontation. So in other words, the Democrats, so these people who are meant to be the left, are the warmongers, right? Yeah. So it says just 9% of Republicans agree that Russians interfered and changed the outcome of the election. Now, the thing is, I've got to do a bit of an aside here, because I know this fella who is still a friend of mine on Facebook. He works for Amnesty International at home. Okay. Now, I was on a comedy course with him several years ago, and the thing is that he puts up this extreme left stuff all the time, but he sincerely believes, and the fellow is fairly sincere, in what he believes, but he believes that Russia interfered in the elections, and there's Russian bots trolling him on the internet. I mean, this is the absurdity of the mentally helpless so-called left. And I'm not right or left, you know what I mean? This is the point, that it's got to you've got this extreme left thing, which is so dumb and stupid, and anything outside the narrow corridor of opinion is far right, which came out of the intelligence services. I've been banging on about an hour into the show, but just 9% of Republicans agree that Russians interfered and changed the outcome of the election. Rather, the majority of Republicans, 58%, believe Russia interfered, but it did not change the outcome. Well, that's a kind of double-edged thing, but nearly 1 in 3 Republicans reject the idea that Russia interfered. Well, it's a start, but that means that both sides are a bit stupid there, in my opinion. On the other hand, the Democrats swallow the Russiagate myth whole. 78% believe it, despite the lack of publicly available evidence. Now, there's an incredibly funny thing here, and I would actually encourage everybody, whether they agree about this Russia thing or not, to follow the Russian embassy, because they put up comedic tweets, like they put a picture of Stonehenge up and say, is there any evidence of the Skripal poisoning? Because we're still waiting for the British government. Is there anybody around the Stonehenge area who's got a clue what's going on? And they put up these very comedic tweets, right? Yeah. And I think that's something about the post-truth world that I quite like, because you've got the embassy basically calling out the British government, saying, what are you banging on about this crap for every day? Like, we'll make a comedic post on Twitter about it. What do you think about all this, Sandy?
Well, I mean, the whole Skripal thing, it was almost like a comedy sketch, really. If you really wanted, there was supposed to be this nerve agent that was supposed to kill people, but people walked out of hospital, and there was a whole cover-up with what the police were doing. There was one policeman who...
Here are the listings for hospital within 11 miles.
Oh. Sorry.
Hey,
sorry about that.
Your phone's we've been infiltrated by Russian bots telling, hey, wait a minute, we've been poisoned. We must have been poisoned, right? Because the phone's telling us where the hospital is. It's MI5. Sorry,
that was
sorry,
really
Najib
weird,
Muraz.
actually. My phone just started telling me where the nearest hospital was, and I don't know why. Just I was talking about nerve agents. Anyway, never mind. The whole thing was an absolute farce, and there's no way. I mean, there's just no proof. I mean, how can you prove that? This could have come from Porton Down. This could have been an inside job. Who knows? We don't know. But the fact is that you can't point the finger at Russia. And all these, people were sent home from the embassies, and there was this whole, extraordinarily expensive, investigation into it, which is still ongoing, actually. And there's no proof that it was the Russians what done it.
There's no proof about any of it, really.
Of course not. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is with this stuff is it's so banal. I stopped following it. I mean, if it was interesting, you'd go, right, I'm going to really research this. But you get this stupid narrative coming out, and you can't even be bothered researching it because there's nothing to research, is there?
It's two people that had a dodgy meal and sat on a park bench. Who knows, But it's turned into this massive drama, and it's farcical. The whole thing's farcical because there's still no evidence.
Well, this is it, and I think Tim Weatherspoon summed it up very well this week, because he was talking about the effects of Brexit, and this is what these extreme leftists are always going on about. Oh God, what's going to happen with Brexit? And all this they know about it is that they think it's just like that they want to be a big part of the European family, which we have been for like 1,000 years. Do you know what I mean? So what I don't really understand that, So the Europeans have already been loosely bonded, but what you've got is this bureaucracy that is like Stasi control, which they completely take out of the equation. And they think it's all about, oh, I might have to get a visa if I go to Germany. Well, that's going to take 2 minutes, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
A lot of youngsters also, it's, oh gosh, my mobile, roaming charges will go up. Well, that's the least of our bloody problems, isn't it, really? And there's an awful lot of youngsters that honestly think that they can't travel without being in the European Union. I mean, it's mad.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the most far-reaching countries, you can get a visa within about 10 minutes. You just scan it yourself and you do it. It's. I mean, I went to Nepal a couple of years ago, and everything's done basically by hand there, and they just give you this thing. You go and scan it on the computer, and you pay your 25 quid or whatever it is, and you've got one for 3 months, and they just stamp it. So, I mean, why is this a problem? I don't quite understand.
There's this whole fear. It's almost like getting a divorce. And one party's saying you'll never survive without me. Do you know what I mean? And it's that awful thing where you think, well, actually, yes, I can survive without you. I can make it on my own. And that's how we have to be. We have to be almost like with the injured party in a divorce, where the other one's a bit of a bully and saying, you won't cope, and we will. We coped before. I always remember. I mean, my parents were kind of always banging on about how we should never have joined the EC, So yeah, I think it's that kind of thing. We've just got to get out, even if we've got no deal, just get out.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Martin has just made a brilliant suggestion here.
What's that?
He says, I have a suggestion to everyone who pays BBC licence fee. Stop it.
Yeah.
Right? And use that £150 or whatever it is to support a couple of dozen alt media channels you actually like. Well, why don't the people who pay the BBC pay Windows on the World, right? And then we could become actually very, very influential, and we'd still broadcast at a secret location from Windows Towers.
Yeah.
Think about it, everybody. I mean, if you're getting the benefit,
that's a really good suggestion.
Put something back. Because I decided to do this all for you, and I've exposed so much over the years. But in response to the pantomime, Russia will definitely respond to Washington's latest sanctions, it says here, and in particular, it is accelerating efforts to abandon the American currency in trade transactions, said Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. Right? Now that's interesting. So they're thinking of dropping the dollar. The time has come when we need to go from words to actions and get rid of the dollar as a means of mutual settlements and look for other alternatives, he said in an interview with International Affairs magazine. They've been peddling this anti-Russian conspiracy narrative for years. And now, to see that it has almost no effect on the majority of ordinary Americans must be humiliating. And of course, British people can see through it as well. All that effort for nothing. The American people have far more sense than a political class that purports to rule over them, and that includes the media. This is stuff I've picked off the internet today. I can't give all the sources because we're going pretty quickly. So-called journalists are extra sensitive these days, responsive to every slight, both real and imagined, precisely because they sense their own impending irrelevance. I think actually this was from the Daily Stormer. Oh my God! Najid Nawaz is going to be on to me. Don't you bring that vile person anywhere near me. Not that he is, but if I was associated even with his name. This is the other thing, isn't it? Like with Corbyn, it's quite funny. It's like he sat on the bus next to somebody who didn't like Israel 20 years ago. He must be a wrong 'un. He's got to be, hasn't he?
He's an anti-Semite.
He's got to be.
That, yeah.
And this is what it's like. But I mean, the dredging is pretty deep on this one.
Yeah.
But I've always found that it is one narrative, and that's what happened when I was at that People's Voice. They try and associate you with something that you weren't associated with. And who does he really work for? Well, I've been self-employed for 25 years. In actual fact, now I'm not employed at all, and I'm not even known to the tax office because I've got nothing to give them.
Fantastic.
Which is great.
Way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Trump called them the enemy of the people
but that's letting them off easy. This is journalists. Our media is the enemy of reality and the servitor of entrenched power. They've inverted their job description. Instead of reporting the facts, they're intent on hiding them. That's why alternative media are growing by leaps and bounds, while the legacy media is on its last legs. Now, this is very interesting and a point that is actually true, because if you look at the comments on CNN videos on YouTube, they are absolutely slaughtered, you know. People hate them. They absolutely hate them. But we've got to get into some other subversives, actually, because let's talk about Hope Not Hate, to spread more division and hate than Antifa. We've talked about that earlier on, and we'll link to them, and I've had them turn up at innocuous events, you know, like I've got some news on Lady Diana's death. Suddenly in the media it's Mossad killed Lady Diana, or it's anti-Semitic. And a load of idiots in masks turn up after their parents have given them their tea on their bikes because they're sustainable. And then they start threatening a load of OAPs, you know. And this was all to do with Hope Not Hate. And even the RMT joined in, you know. I mean, I think that they were misled. But this is the point, you see, because it becomes... it's a horrible inverse thing. Instead of a moral duty, it becomes blackmail, where you have to turn up if they tell you to, you know. And that's the point of all this stuff, isn't it? It's all done with subversion. They're well funded and laughable. The laughable charity, Hope Not Hate, of the intelligence services, always begging for public donations. So this is their latest email, right? Hope Not Hate. It goes, "Are you in? We've been tracking the development of the far right online for a long time. We know that social media has been an extremely successful tactic for our opponents." Well, there's loads of people who don't like you. That's the point. Yeah, your opponents are people who hate you because you spread hate. That's why they hate you. There's a great video where one of them goes down to East London and they just say, "Get in your car, mate. We don't want you here. Get in your car, go home." And he doesn't know what to say. But these people are pretty switched on. They don't threaten him, but in a way they are threatening, because they're saying, "You're in our area, mate. Go home. We don't want you." And I think that is actually quite... I mean, you can say, "Oh yeah, you shouldn't be saying that." But in actual fact, when you're dealing with subversion, you should, because they're there for the wrong reason. They're not there to empower people. They're not there for any real anti-racist agenda. They're there for an agenda, you know. So it carries on. That's why we've launched Hope Group, a brand new way for us to work together. Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't it? To tackle the far right online. Now, who could the far right possibly be? Well, the far right is anybody who disagrees with them, isn't it? Right? Exactly. We're bringing together committed, motivated activists, like the paid activists that we've been talking about, you know, to do what we all do best: counter the far right's hateful agenda with a bigger, better message of hope. Wasn't that what Obama said before he bombed 140 civilians in Pakistan and then got the Nobel Peace Prize 10 days later? So, they're recruiting useful idiots for their cause. Wouldn't it be great to infiltrate them as they attempt to infiltrate whatever they call far-right organisations? Because their attempt at infiltrating the far right was laughable. They went outside with someone who said, "Oh, he looks like he's in the Hitler Youth because he was wearing shorts." Right? Well, anyone with long shorts on who's over 40 with braces probably looks like they might have been in the Hitler Youth, you know.
Sort of the lederhosen look.
The lederhosen. Or they could have been a Swiss banker. You know what I mean? I mean, Swiss bankers must wear lederhosen at some time, you know. So he's wearing a leder. Anyone in lederhosen's got to be a Nazi, you know. Well,
whistling Edelweiss at the same time.
Cable ties, cable ties. Yeah. No, that was a joke I had ages ago. Nothing to do. Their last attempt seems to have died a death, as no one was actually extreme enough for their hate narrative. Now, here's another one. a bit like what we were talking about earlier on. Austrian police raid on intelligence services. On the morning of February 28th, now just going back a bit, it's very interesting, right? It was sent to me by somebody recently with a whole load of these sort of stories, one of which we covered earlier. On the morning of February 28th, police stormed offices at Austria's main domestic and intelligence agency and carted off some of the nation's most sensitive secrets in open crates and plastic bags. Top spy service officials working from home that day were greeted by officers threatening to break down their doors. The extraordinary decision to target the agency responsible for defending the country from a multitude of threats, including right-wing extremism, had been made by the service's new bosses, members of the far-right Freedom Party. What a shock! The government is raiding an organisation whose mandate is explicitly against their political orientation. Why could they possibly want to do that? The reason? Defending the totalitarian North Korean regime from an Austrian espionage operation, among others cited in the search warrant. Critics saw absurd pretext for a politically motivated stab at an independent institution that could threaten the party's agenda. Got to agree with the critics here, it says. The party raided the deep state organisation because they rightly understand that they're the enemy of the people and the state, which is my point about this show. The government should be raiding MI5 and MI6 to see who they're tracking, because when it comes out years later, oh yeah, they're tracking Corbyn. Oh yeah, well of course it is now it's very much in vogue. But the old-fashioned left were totally infiltrated by MI5. And now we've got this thing of now they're supporting the extreme left. So MI5 are basically traitors to their own cause. They're traitors to their own country. And anyone, I've had them come up to me, I've talked about this on shows before. They're totally inept, but they're bloody threatening. And we're doing nothing wrong. So they're the subversives.
Yeah.
So they're working for the deep state. Who's the deep state working for? Well, it's not in the interest of this country, is it?
No.
Because how come they let people like Tommy Robinson out there and put them on a pedestal? Oh, because they're supported by our third-party interest in the Middle East, the one we're not allowed to talk about. Same as Katie Hopkins. I mean, why is somebody whose basically alignment is to Tel Aviv trying to cause divide and rule in this country on a daily basis?
Yeah.
So Donald Trump has, in just over 2 years, abandoned the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is good, isn't it? The TPP ditched the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. When we were talking about this on the shows 2 years ago or 18 months ago, and it's really threatening, this stuff. It was absolute corporate control of government.
And he's got rid of the lot.
But we're just giving that a bit of airtime because obviously he's sexist though, isn't he? He's sexist. So you can't talk about the actual things the government are doing. You have to focus on the trivia, don't you?
Yeah, on his private life, which at the end of the day, somehow it worked with with other presidents. They could get away with murder, but he can't do anything. He can't sneeze without anybody saying, "Oh, you're sexist," or you're a pervert, or you're whatever. But actually, the policies that in his executive orders are doing all the right things.
Yeah, and he's against broadly against Agenda 21.
Exactly. And although he doesn't mention it, he doesn't say it, but all his policies are against Agenda 21. He's against the globalists at the end of the day. And you've got to take your hat off to him. That's forget about his personal life. Okay, he's probably a bit misogynistic. He's a bit of a wide boy, but his policies are. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think he's a bit of a mafioso. It's almost as though he's against the globalists because actually he wants to be in control. Do you know what I mean? He's a bit of a...
Yeah, I think the thing is that people take it down to a simplistic... You see, the thing is the extreme left have to have everything simplistic and put into a dummy into their mouth.
Yeah.
The thing is that they're not able to see strategy. So if they'd have studied, say, what happened in Russia and the way that communism really works, then they would know about strategy, but they don't know about strategy. That's the really weird thing. So they walk blindly into this stuff, And I hear it all the time. It's like, oh, Trump, the Russians. What the hell has Trump got to do with the Russians? He's actually saying, okay, that's good that we meet with Putin. Putin's looking after his own people. What the hell's wrong with that?
Yeah.
What has that got to do with anything else? I don't get it, you know.
And you know, you look at, you know, Russia's a very different place these days, and I think Putin is, you know, he's looking after his own, and Trump's looking after his own, and that's what a leader should do with their countries, look after their own. If every country looked after their own, then we wouldn't have all this nonsense.
Well, that's right. Right, now, Facebook's fake news narratives. Western Journal, in its own study, found that while left-wing publishers saw a roughly 2% increase in web traffic from Facebook following the algorithm changes, so-called conservative sites saw a loss of traffic averaging around 14%. Now, this is quite interesting because I don't take any interest in Facebook now. I don't take it seriously. But the stuff that comes on there, it's like it's some kind of corporate news feed now, isn't it? I mean,
it's very controlled. Gosh, yeah.
You know, yeah.
Really controlled.
So maybe we should just move on from that altogether and get on to Mr. Soros. A confidential 49-page memo for defeating Trump by working with major social media platforms to eliminate right-wing propaganda and fake news was presented in January 2017 by Media Matters founder Dave Brock at a retreat in Florida with about 100 donors, the Washington Free Beacon reported at the time. On Monday, the Gateway Pundit blog noted the memo's relationship with recent moves by Silicon Valley tech giants to shadow ban conservative political candidates and pundits and remove content. The Free Beacon obtained a copy of the memo. Now, this is very interesting, right? Everybody should check this out. And what I should do, I'll put it into chat later on. I don't know whether I can do it now because I'm on the other computer, but it's on scribed.com. It's called David Brock Confidential Memo on Fighting Trump. Now, this is absolutely vile subversion, right? It's unbelievable, but people don't realise. They go on about Soros, but they don't realise how much he actually controls.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, he is subverting governments, and that's why the Eastern Europeans are getting the right idea and kicking him out. We talked about Viktor Orban the other week, now Poland's doing it. You know, they know that their governments are being subverted. Takes us back to what we're saying, you know. So we've got the BBC is our own George Soros, basically, with Media Matters. And because this woman's got put in prison, and oh God, she's just a journalist. No, she's not. So let's go on to this. The memo spells out a 4-year agenda that deployed Media Matters along with American Bridge, ShareBlue and Citizens for Responsibility. Doesn't that sound great? And ethics. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW it's called, to attack Trump and Republicans. Now, this is all on record, yeah? That this is a Soros-backed coup of the American government, right? That's what it is. The strategies...
This is a democratically elected president, and he's trying to take him down, basically. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, the memo spells out a 4-year agenda that deployed Media Matters along with American Bridge, ShareBlue and Citizens' Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW. The strategies are impeachment, expanding Media Matters' mission to combat government misinformation. What the hell's it got to do with an uninterested third party? You know, ensuring democratic control of the Senate in the 2018 midterm elections, filing that didn't work. Filing lawsuits against the Trump administration, monetizing political advocacy using a digital attacker to delegitimize Trump's presidency and damage Republicans, and partnering with Facebook to combat fake news. That was the previous thing, right? So Soros is partnered with Facebook, right? Okay, now, David Brock confidential memo on fighting Donald Trump obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. Okay, Hungarian-born American billionaire George Soros has repeatedly flouted US charity laws, okay? Wall Street analyst Charles Ortel told Sputnik, this is basically an offshoot of RT, explaining why the magnate has dramatically stepped up his lobbying activities under Donald Trump's presidency. The vast network of false front George Soros-backed charities that actually seem to be political action organisations deserves coordinated scrutiny by nations, including the US and Russia, among others, that likely have been severely damaged over the years. Wall Street analyst, investor and investigative journalist Charles Ortel told Sputnik. On August 19th, Judicial Watch, a government watchdog, tweeted that it uncovered bombshell information showing that the Obama administration sent US taxpayer funds overseas to an organisation supported by George Soros, which used the money to fund left-wing political activities benefiting the socialist government of Albania, referring to its April report and apparently signalling that it continues to keep an eye on the magnate. The Soros echo chamber is even larger. Many of his organisations have a media component, from New Orleans, where he funds The Lens, to nations that were once part of the former Soviet Union, but he doesn't have a media empire. Well, he hasn't got one on show, you see, that's the thing. Right? The recent wave of censorship, conservative voice on the internet, tech giants, Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now, let's go to Open Society. Now, this is DC Leaks. We are getting an inside look at the machinations of the multi-billionaires' organisations. Soros is exploiting the refugee crisis to advance his radical left agenda. Indeed, his Open Society Foundation should be renamed the Open Border Foundation. One leaked memo stands out for its brazen presumption for the refugee crisis should be accepted as the new normal. It's entitled Migration Governance and Enforcement Portfolio Review. The memo was written by Anna Crowley, the Programme Officer of OSF's International Migration Initiative, and Kate Rosin, a Programme Specialist for the same initiative, never wanting, in Rahm Emanuel's words, to let a serious crisis go to waste. I think it was a good crisis, wasn't it? The memo's authors wrote how the refugee crisis is opening new opportunities with respect to donors. They also praised efforts to take advantage of momentum created by the current crisis to shape conversations about rethinking migration governance. Yeah, first it was Russia that got tired of Soros' regime change operations, ousting his Open Society as a fifth column operation. Then more recently, Hungarian President Viktor Orban joined Putin in his crusade against Soros, passing a similar anti-NGO law. Now, this is a major point, right, that we should be banning these NGOs. And this takes us back to these subversives in Iran. Basically, non-government organisations, you know, and with a supermajority owned by... Yeah, okay, so let's flow down, because we're actually running out of time here. Now, a report by the Media Consortium detailed how progressives had created an echo chamber, that word again, which came out of the British Psychological Association and Demos, of outlets in which a message pushes the larger public or the mainstream media to acknowledge, respond and give airtime to progressive ideas because it is repeated many times. Exactly. So that becomes the only narrative. And anything outside that is extreme, as we've heard before, like what they did to Kevin or George or John or whatever his name is earlier today, right? According to the report called The Big Thaw, if done well, the message within the echo chamber can become the accepted meme, impact political dynamics, shift public opinion and change public policy. Oh, that sounds a bit like Media Matters, doesn't it? They're like a sort of mini Soros, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
The mindset plays out in much of what the consortium members do. Alternet describes itself as an award-winning news magazine and online community that creates original journalism and amplifies the best of hundreds of other independent media sources. Right, now, Brave New Films, another Soros thing, Media Consortium, is run by the same people who run Brave New Foundation, Robert Greenwald and Jim Miller, produce and distribute videos attacking businesses and conservatives. Then there's my pet hate, and probably yours, Sandy, the Young Turks. Now, the Young Turks was the name given to the subversives who overthrew the Turkish government, right?
Yeah.
The communists who overthrew the Turkish government, right? And MSNBC host Cenk Uygur. Absolute. Oh, he's basically a Majid Nawaz, really. That's what he is. In 2010, he was welcomed to the network with a press release detailing his web impact. One of YouTube's top 100 partners. I wonder why that is. You know, the irreverent talk show averages 18 million views per month and has over 320 million views overall on its YouTube channel. The list goes on and on. Project Syndicate calls itself the world's preeminent source of original op-ed commentaries. I never understand that terminology, really. Operation Education is it? It has wide reach. As of May 2011, Project Syndicate membership included 462 leading newspapers in 150 countries. This is the taking over of democracies.
It is.
Its monthly circulation is 72,815,528. Naturally, support comes from the Open Society Institute. Now, the thing is about this, yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable that this stuff doesn't entirely work, right? Isn't it unbelievable? Because if you had that much money and it doesn't work and you're getting kicked out of countries, it must be blatantly obvious that you're subversive, mustn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, the more we talk about this, the more people will get this. I mean, I think you know, there's a big worry about populism becoming quite strong in Europe, and I think without a doubt, you know, all this uncovering of the subversive tactics that they're using, people are wising up all over Europe.
Yeah. Public News Service, another Soros thing, describes itself as a member-supported news service that advocates journalism in the public interest. Oh, whose public interest is that?
Yeah,
then?
exactly.
It is a network of state-based news services in 33 states. It claims it reaches a combined national weekly audience of 24 million. It is a wonder anyone has brain cells left with the sheer amount of propaganda being perpetrated, I put as a note. I preempted myself again. So, PNS is proud of its 2010 success. Last year, the Public Service News produced over 4,000 stories featuring public interest contests that were redistributed several 100,000 times on 6,114 radio stations, 928 print outlets, 133 TV stations, and hundreds of websites. Nationally, an average of 60 outlets using each story, and that was going back to 2010 onwards, right? Now, this is incredible, right? Now, we're going to... Yeah, I hope we get through some of this stuff because we want to get to the fracking as well, which was the beginning of the show. I like to start where I finish, you see. Norway goes full-on extreme left terrorist retard. I put as a headline, right? This is where those who don't believe the climate change hoax are deniers and far-right extremists. Now, this is a new kind of organisation that's been set up in Norway, which basically combines climate change denial with being far right, right? Which doesn't make any bloody sense whatsoever, right? What's the weather got to do with political opinion? It's got nothing to do with it, has it? You know. So scientific and political awareness of the greenhouse effect and human influence on the climate has existed over 3 decades. Right? Now this is this new organisation that's been set up. During the 1980s, there was a strong environmental movement and a political consensus on the issue. But in recent years, climate change denial, denying that changes to the climate are due to human influence on the environment. Now, so climate change denial means that it doesn't mean that you're denying that the climate changes, which is, again, it's total subversion of language.
Yeah, because the climate is changing. So if you're denying it, I mean, it's a nonsense. The whole,
well, exactly.
The whole thing is a nonsense.
The whole thing about the British joke of talking about the weather is about climate change, right?
Yeah. We've always had changeable climate.
I mean, it's actually the main point of conversation. So climate change is the main point of conversation. All right, we're talking about Norway here, but I presume it's pretty similar because, you know, we're sort of, you know, we're from the same bit of land, really. The comprehensive project, we don't take climate change... Why don't we take climate change seriously? A study of climate change denial is now collecting the world's foremost researchers in this area. In the project, the network will examine the ideas and interests behind climate change denial, with a particular focus on right-wing nationalism. Now, what the hell has that got to do with it?
Put it in the sort of category of Holocaust denial.
Well, of course, of course, of course, you have to do that because it's like, but when they put denial, it means, well, it's something, you know, there's something dodgy going on here. What are you talking about? You know. Yeah. So okay. So if you deny that the weather changes, then you're right wing. Right? No, I don't get this, right? Because that's got nothing to do with it, has it? Why has that got anything to do with the weather?
Exactly.
You know, it's got nothing to do with it, has it? Right-wing nationalists linked to climate change denial are a relatively unresearched topic. Wonder why? You know, I put.
But again, it's freedom of speech, isn't it? It's this, you know, you're not allowed to have an opinion.
No.
You have to believe what they believe.
So it says here, right? And guess what? Yeah. I wonder why this is, Sandy. Yeah, right-wing nationalism's links to climate change denial are a relatively unresearched topic. Now I wonder why that is. Why would I wonder why that? Why haven't you never put those two things together?
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, well, I put my dustbin out once a week on a Tuesday. Does that mean I'm racist? Do you know what I mean? It's got nothing to do with it whatsoever, right? And so, again, you know, it says, but environmental sociology. Oh
please,
we know what these are about, don't we? Yawntastic recently published an article where Hultman and his research colleagues show the connections between conservatism, xenophobia, and climate change denial. Through a study in Norway. Well, anybody can make anything link together, right?
Yeah.
It's totally easy to do.
Yeah, and people that collect koi carp, obviously. I mean, you could say anything, couldn't you? People that play dominoes. I don't know.
Well, dominoes is basically very right wing because
obviously
it goes back to social clubs. It goes back to people who are intolerant of foreigners. Sandy, didn't you know that? But then again, you have West Indian domino groups as well. So maybe there is a crossover. Hope Not Hate maybe could get the West Indian domino players to work with the domino players at one of the last remaining social clubs in Buckinghamshire, which is white.
It's silly for words, isn't it? It's too silly.
No, it is, and it's something I don't think the majority of people would even thought of even joining up, which is the absurdity of it. But yeah, going back to the beginning, as we were, like the fracking frontline is full of ancient provocateurs and change agents with globalist agendas. How can this be? Well, let's look at where the money from Occupy went into the bank account of Climate Camp Action. Take it back to the beginning of the show, a police infiltration front organisation. Now, the thing is, that I wanted to finish the show off. I don't know how. I worked on this and I thought I've got an hour's stuff there at least. I've got about 3 hours stuff here.
You have to do another show, Mark.
Right. Now, what I wanted to say in conclusion to this show, about these organisations like Reclaim the Power, uses consensus-based decision making. Reclaim the Power are basically. They're aligning themselves with the fracking movement and all this stuff now, Reclaim the Power uses consensus-based decision-making to give everyone an equal say, in contrast to majority voting. Wait a minute, majority voting is where you get a yes and a no.
Yeah.
What we get here is
consensus is fake. I mean,
consensus is where we're psychologically subverting you into believing that you voted for what we're telling you you're getting, whereby a large minority of people may have to live with decisions they completely disagree with, they're saying, right? A consensus-based system aims to reach decisions that reflect and synthesise diverse viewpoints as far as possible, thereby maximising people's willingness to carry out those decisions. Well, what a load of crap. That's from Reclaim the Power website. And anybody who wants to join these groups, I've got some great seaside property in Switzerland. Give us a call. It's overlooking the sea, overlooking the Mediterranean in Switzerland. Anybody who actually goes to these websites or gets involved with these groups, this is what I'm saying, these fake narrative groups. Now, this, in conclusion, is what I wanted to say. Somebody called me who got infiltrated, and this is a mission statement for anybody who's got a local group opposing the council or whatever else it is, We are an unaffiliated group of local residents concerned about the lack of democratic process in local government planning and policy. We will remain unaffiliated as individuals acting collectively and within the law towards a truly inclusive democratic process where all voices are heard. We are not affiliated with any group or organisation whatsoever. This does not mean that we do or do not endorse other groups. Okay? We do not agree with arriving at consensus through being steered into predetermined outcomes by trained facilitators, either working for the council or public-private partnerships. We deem this to be against the public interest and an affront to democracy. So stick that up your shirt, Nawaz, change agents, and all those people who are subverting democracy in this country. I'm going to print that on the website in that article. I gave it to my friend up north because she's absolutely distraught that she got blamed for something that didn't happen, and they made her the leader of a group. And anybody who takes this on, you need to be thinking like this, because you have to get out of this consensus reality that's being imposed. Last word to you, Sandy. I know I've been rattling on a bit.
Oh, I don't know what to say, Mark. You've said so much, but yeah, I mean, the fact is that this seems to be a program that's in every, well, it's in every town council. It's, you know, if you're noticing all this stuff going on in your town council, you can, you know, be a group and come up and this what Mark's just written is a fantastic way of getting round their subversive tactics. And yeah, just, you know, just look at what is going on in your locality and understand it, identify what's going on, because this subversive stuff is going on all over the place, in every town council, in every community, you know, literally from global to local, which is what they plan to do. So yeah.
Thanks, Sandy. And come and see us on the 6th of October at the Ark in Bristol, 12 a.m. Look on the website, book your tickets. It's going to be a great day. And we are the change that we want to see. Good night, everybody.
Good night.